Good evening, friends, and welcome to this very special live stream that is going out on FanFiAddict and Spotlight Indie. My name is HL TInsley. I am going to be hosting this panel of illustrious author guests. Welcome to anyone who is in the chat. This is going to be an interactive session talking about anthologies, how to write them. So if you have any questions, please do pop them in the chat and we will go through them as they come along. Now, I don't know about you, but on a cold winter's night, there's nothing I like better than good friends, great fiction, and some fantasy fungi, which is really why we're here, because we're here to talk about the now successful, I believe, Kickstarter campaign, the Book of Spores, and to introduce it and tell us a little bit more about it, I'm going to ask my first guest. Adrian, do you want to introduce yourself and tell everyone a little bit about your project?
Sure. So I'm Adrian M. Gibson. I'm the author of Mushroom Blues, which is my debut novel, but then along with Frasier Armitage and Eleni Argyro and Ed Crocker, co-editor of the Book of Spores anthology. And honestly, this is like a passion project and something that we've been putting together for quite a while now. Like Frasier can talk a bit about that as well. But it's kind of crazy just to see like the culmination of this anthology. We call it like a fungal FanFiAddict anthology because it's bringing together a bunch of authors from the FanFiAddict book blog as well as SFF Addicts podcast, which is my podcast with MJ Kuhn and Greta Kelly. And so it's just bringing together a bunch of really talented authors and all of them contributing stories, whether it's sci-fi, horror, fantasy, to this anthology that's kind of knit together with this frame story of an archivist searching for clues about this this book of spores that is going to different universes within the multiverse and infecting them. And so each story within the anthology is a story that's being infected by the titular book of spores.
That's awesome. And I have to say, as someone who is a fan of alliteration, I am loving all the fantastic fungal fantasy phrasing. That's definitely not going to trip me up later at all. So
Not at all, not at all. And I can't
it's
show
all
off
good.
the artwork, so everyone gets a sense of just like how batshit and bonkers this project is.
I
And
mean,
shout out to Jeff Brown, who's the cover artist that created this, and I'm just such a fan of his work, and he did an incredible job of kind of bringing this project to life and evoking like multiple genres and an entire anthology within one piece of artwork.
it is by far just one of the most like evocative pieces of artwork I think I've seen on a cover for a long, long time. It's
Yeah.
absolutely stunning. Artistic genius. I'm going to jump over to our next guest, however, because this is a panel about anthologies and writing. So we're going to talk about the Book of Spores, but we're also going to talk about writing anthologies in general. And this is an author who has put together a few of some of the best anthologies that you can hope to read. Just say, Ting, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your anthologies?
Well, thank you, Holly, for the kind words. So I'm Xueting. I write Chinese culture books, and I also curate Chinese SFF anthologies. I'm the author of Sinophagia, which is a horror anthology, and Sinopticon, which is science fiction anthology. Currently, I'm working on China 100 Plus, which is a multi-genre anthology of Chinese fiction based around one theme.
That's awesome.
And other things in the works.
Too many things to name. Just too many. I think we all know that challenge, having too many projects on the go. Speaking of which, Frasier Armitage, who always has at least 20 projects on the go, tell us a little bit about your involvement with the Book of Spores and a bit about your own work as well.
Hi, Holly. How are you doing?
Hi. I'm good.
I basically took up the mantle of let's get an anthology together after it was decided that we were going to do one within the FanFiAddict family, because FanFiAddict, I mean, everybody who's watching on Spotlight knows that at the Spotlight Indie family, which is awesome. But everybody who's watching on FanFiAddict knows that the FanFiAddict family is huge. And as it was growing, with author and author and author joining, we just got to a point whereby it would have just been ridiculous not to do an anthology with all these amazing people. So we decided to put one together. That was like, I mean, probably like coming up 2 years ago, when one of the FanFiAddict guys basically said, let's just finally do it. I'll put together a Google Doc, send me your ideas as to what we can do it about. We did that, and then a few months later, they were like, look, I can't do this anymore. Does someone want to pick up this project? So I was like, sure. So they sent me all
I think that's a very common thread in anthologies. I can't do this anymore. Someone else take over.
Yeah. So they sent me like the list of all the responses, and by far and away, the thing that everybody wanted to do was honor Adrian's Fungleverse, which was emerging at the time and hadn't yet made its way into the world. And it was a case of, yeah, let's do something Fungalpunk, let's do something with mushrooms. So then it was kind of my job to figure out what shape that took, how that came together, who could get involved. And I kind of became like the developmental editor of the anthology over the space of like a year and a bit. And then it was a case of, right, we've got the stories, what do we do with them? Which is where Adrian was just an absolute legend, and Eleni, in sort of figuring out where we were sort of going to take it and how it was going to work. So yeah, it's basically, I sat on it for a very, very, very long time, and then Adrian made something happen. So that's the origin story of this book.
I love it. I love a good. I love an origin story, and I really want to set us a target for by the end of this live stream, we have to have created the longest sentence using alliteration. So far we've got the FanFi family, fantastic fungal fantasy. So if by the end of that we can get a full sentence, that would be
From Frasier.
fantastic.
From Frasier.
Yeah. Yes. There's a few people popping up in the chat. Just want to say hi to at Revolting Peasant Press. That's Thomas J. Devons, I believe. Nice to see you, Thomas.
Howdy, y'all.
Please pop any questions that you want to ask to our panelists into the chat. And just to let people know as well, I am here as a host of Spotlight Indie, but I am also the creator of an anthology called The Anatomy of Fear, which was successfully funded on Kickstarter in somewhere between 2020 and 2024. I can't remember the actual year of it.
I think it was 2023 because we were promoting it during TBRCon 2023.
Yes. So that was a horror fantasy anthology that I did with a bunch of indie authors. That was a really cool experience. So I will be lending the limited knowledge that I have of organizing anthologies to this conversation. So let's kick off and talk a little bit about early development challenges. So my first question, and this is an open question, so I feel to jump in whoever wants to go first. What made you do it? Is my first question. And what were some of the lessons that you took from your own experience as being an author to creating an anthology?
Frasier's just giggling over there.
This is what Frasier does because he's hoping someone else will jump in first. But
no, my internet went a bit weird for a second, so I was just paused, and I've only just caught up with what you were saying. So basically, like, why do it? Right? That's the question.
Yeah.
So I can answer that one. Yeah, totally. Basically, I think if you get enough creative people together, creative things happen and you get creative ideas forming. And for me, I love the process of collaboration. I absolutely love it. You know, being able to talk and interact with creative people is a joy. So an anthology is one of those projects that just gives. It's just one of those things where it's like, yeah, I mean, in this specific case, it was because we had all of these creative people in the one spot. You know, we had a reason to be able to sort of justify, yep, okay, I need to be able to group these stories together because look what we've got. It's absolutely incredible. So we get to showcase some amazing talent. And I think that's true across the board though. You know, I think with most anthologies, it usually comes from passion rather than any other reason. Because people are like, yeah, I love stories. I love what these storytellers do. It's a really powerful thing to be able to do that and to be able to curate that. So yeah, it's kind of like the ultimate fanboy mission. You get to basically say, yeah, I love all of this. Like, let me assemble the dream team and make it happen. It's amazing. Yeah. Why not do it, right?
Because as we know, Frasier loves to boost other people and promote other people. but he doesn't do it enough to himself. So this is kind of like, I mean, I jumped on board because like everything that I get involved with, it's like somebody needs help and I'm just like, well, fuck it. Like, let me lend my skills to this, whatever's going on here. And in the case of an anthology, it's kind of like, you know, Frasier's really, really good at doing stuff like developmental editing and kind of corralling people and just kind of being like a bit of a manager in that sense. Whereas for the Book of Spores, I jumped in and I was like, all right, anything that has anything to do with design or art or whatever, I was like, I'm taking care of that and nobody bother me and I will get it done and I will make sure it's beautiful. And that kind of combination of skills, like Eleni as well, was just very, very good at kind of being meticulous about certain things in the stories, offering different perspectives. And she was kind of like our resident curmudgeon. So when Frasier and I are just getting all hyped up, Eleni kind of comes in and be like, shut up. I'm going to ground you for a second because we need to talk about important stuff. Which is always good. It's like, yeah, you need somebody like that. Yeah. So I think having multiple people involved in an anthology and kind of utilizing everybody's different skills is like, it doesn't really matter how you got involved in the project, because I think anthologies a lot of the time, especially in indie, kind of come up naturally. Like they're just kind of like a natural evolution of, you know, I love these kinds of stories and I think they deserve a showcase, or I have a bunch of friends who are really talented and I want to do something with them. And the rest just kind of builds on top of that general foundation of we're passionate about X thing and let's do something tangible about it.
Yeah,
definitely passion. I think it's about the genre is where it starts. For my anthologies, because it's literature from another culture, and therefore that was one of the best ways to showcase the range that's available in that genre. So that's why, and that the short form fiction suits Chinese literature quite well, because it's either very short or it's very long. So if we get a smorgasbord of, if I can put together a smorgasbord of things that readers can sample and see what they like, but very often it's also for the publishers to see what's out there and what they can pick up as well.
Yeah, and I mean, in the case of your anthologies, it's like these are stories that are not widely available to an English-speaking readership, and so it's kind of like opening the door for people to understand, like, this is what is happening in China. Like, these are the kinds of stories that are being published. These are the kinds of writers that are working there, and yeah, like, the act of translation I think is really interesting, because it's like not only is this an anthology, like in the case of your anthologies, not only are they anthologies, but they are also translated works that are then being repackaged and presented to an entirely different audience in an entirely different language. And so it's kind of like there's the amazing sort of transformation that is involved in translating something, especially fiction. And then there's the second part of that, which is delivering those stories to people who never would have come across them before. So I think in your case, like, it's really cool that you're able to showcase different authors from China to different readers around the world who don't necessarily speak Mandarin or Cantonese or anything like that, who can't read Chinese, and be able to give them an opportunity to be like, oh, that's amazing. It's not just like, you know, Cixin Liu or something like that. Like, there are so many other Chinese authors and they're doing incredible things.
Yeah, exactly. So this is the perfect format. The anthology is to showcase, give the opportunity for multiple authors to be showcased, what people are not familiar with. And you were talking about, it's not just Cixin Liu. In terms of Sinopticon, the publishers were like, oh, we want this. Now we want this after the Hugo. We would really like a Chinese science fiction anthology. And I was like, oh, well, I have been saying this for years. Yay, finally. It was a case of it's a case of showing who else is out there in the tradition.
And I mean,
Yeah.
in the case of publishers, you kind of have to beat them over the head until they finally notice something. It's like, I've been wanting to do this for years. In the case of indie publishing, it's like, and Kickstarter and things like that, just screw it. Like, let's do it ourselves. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a great thing about indie publishing.
Yeah,
I
I think
the
so.
thing that makes Sinophagia and Sinopticon so brilliant though is the passion that Xueting brings to it. Because like without that passion, it wouldn't be half as good. And I think this is the thing about any anthology. You know, you've got to have that passion first, because otherwise, if it's just a collection of stories, it's only going to be as good. But if you find something that you really, really love, and then you say, right, okay, let's build the anthology around this, it just hits differently, and everybody involved finds that it's different. What was it that made you do Anatomy of Fear, Holly?
I mean, insanity is probably the driving factor behind it. I mean, definitely, I agree. I think the points that have already been made about using anthology as a platform to bring a passion project together, but also to give people kind of that accessibility to something that they maybe wouldn't have seen before. I also think that it's really important that especially in the indie community, there's not a huge amount of opportunity for us, so we have to create opportunities for ourselves, so doing things like anthologies, doing things like events and conventions and author talks on YouTube. I think all of that adds up to creating more opportunities for people to discover indie books and to enjoy them and to see what is out there. So I want to just jump a little bit now that we've established that it's very much a passion project. I want to talk about maybe some of the criteria that goes around early development, and mainly around how strict you need to be in order to put together an anthology. Because when you've got lots of people with lots of different ideas, it can be very easy to get off track. So, Adrian, kind of what was your involvement with that side of things, and did you find that you had to be very strict with people?
No, I mean, Frasier definitely took a lot of that load. Personally, it's like, I mean, Eleni's in the chat. I felt the disturbance in the force that
Hi,
shit was being
Eleni.
talked about.
Yeah.
Hi, how are you doing, Eleni? So like I said earlier, like Frasier was doing a lot of like the corralling of basically, and he's such a sweet guy, and so it's kind of like it took a while for things to happen because Frasier was just like, take your time and like, get it to me when it's ready, kind of thing. There was like a deadline in like massive air quotes, but that deadline ended up being very flexible for different people. In the end, I think it's kind of like in this particular case, because we are friends with everyone who's in the anthology, that took quite a bit of the stress of like miscommunication or just like having to communicate in general with people and kind of being a little bit strict. It's like, okay, so and so needs to kind of hurry up with their story, so I'll just send them like a WhatsApp message and be like, hey, what's going on with your story, when's it going to be ready, kind of thing. Here's what we're kind of looking at, try and get it done by this time. And so because of that familiarity, because this was kind of like a family project, it took quite a lot of the awkwardness and anxiety out of like the communication side of things, because it's like not necessarily like, okay, I've got like free go to be an asshole to everybody, but more so I have the comfort and the relationship with all of these people to be able to be straightforward and honest with them about what our expectations are and what we need and when we need it. And so, Frasier definitely handled a lot of that stuff. But when it came to like doing the Kickstarter and everything, everyone was just so spirited and so involved in every part of that process. It's like, okay, basically like a flip switched on and we were like, yo, we're doing this. We need you guys to record this stuff with us. We need to do this kind of promotion and blah, 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 blah. And I just gave them like a list of things that we have to do and everyone was on board. And so in that case, it wasn't necessarily like, all right, I have to email however many authors and I might not have, you know, I might be friends with somebody, but it's not that kind of close relationship where I do have that confidence and comfort with them to be able to speak plainly about things, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think
So, go ahead, Frasier.
what happens with the way that it goes when it comes to limits of things is that it changes as the project develops. Because in the beginning, if you're doing an anthology, right? Oh yeah, thanks. So Adrian says I'm too sweet. Eleni says I'm too soft. That tells you everything about what what it was
Yeah,
like.
man, you're sweet. You're sweet and soft. You're like you know,
like soft scoop ice cream. Yeah.
yeah. There you go. Frasier is soft serve in human
vanilla
form.
soft serve ice cream in human form. No, so at the very beginning, you know, when if you're putting together an anthology, right, and you do an open call for submissions, you read through all of the submissions, you become a fan of the stories that you want to include. That means that you are gonna, at the very beginning, be wanting to get these people on board. You're going to be cutting an awful lot of slack. You're going to be dealing with them as a fan of this story, and as a, you know, your passion's going to be going into it. But as the story progresses and as the journey progresses towards publication, a lot more things have to happen at certain times in order for that publication to happen, which means that you become a little bit more strict the more time that passes. So in the early stages of this, you know, there were people who we just put like a blanket out there among the FanFiAddict family, like, if you've got a story idea, you want to work on it, send it to Frasier. And then there were other authors who we approached because we wanted the book to be as brilliant as possible. So we said, look, we'd really like for you guys to be involved with it. So we took like this dual approach with it. So, you know, we ended up sort of dealing with sort of like both sides of like, right, we're a fan of this author, we want them, or we're a fan of this story that someone's put together, we want that. So I was able to cut an awful lot of slack in the beginning, but that meant that like the next stage of the project didn't happen until like a year and a half later. And that's just like, you know, if I'd brought Adrian and Eleni on board then, maybe we would have had a bad cop, because my technique is like good cop, great cop. So it's like
good cop, great cop.
Doesn't really work any other way. So but if you're putting together an anthology, I think the further along the line you go, it's you develop more confidence in the project as you see it build, to be able to say, no, this is the deadline now, we need to work to this, and then to be able to say, right, okay, this is happening on this date, so everything needs to be ready well before then. And so yeah, it's a flexible living thing, I've found, with stuff like that. But yeah, it just depends on the type of anthology you're putting together, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
my
that's
experiences. Oh, sorry. My experiences have been a bit different in that the anthologies I've worked on before have been seeking stories from the natural environment, finding them and curating them, so they were already written. But then the one that I'm currently working on is one that's newly commissioned, and a lot of everybody's personalities, relationships, and idiosyncrasies are more impactful.
Evident.
Yeah, and having worked in print production does help with things like scheduling, and sometimes having to be the bad cop, as it were, you know, to keep things on track. But I think you build up a relationship with the writers as you work with them, and especially in a culture that I work in, the kind of personal relations are very important in terms of establishing, when you're negotiating with the publishers or the writers, or you're having a creative discussion. So building up relationships, friendships, so that you can be more chatty and more kind of, you know, more lenient in where there's room, and more kind of chase them when you need to. I think that's quite important. Yeah.
I remember when Sinophagia was released, and we chatted on the FanFiAddict channel, didn't we, Xueting, about it? And I found it so fascinating talking about and hearing about the amount of work that it took to actually track down sort of a lot of these authors of stories who you wanted to include and everything like that. And I think quite a lot of the behind the same stuff. You kind of, if you've not put an anthology together before, you think that just, oh, it's just getting a bunch of stories together, or it's getting a bunch of authors together. It's not that. It's an awful lot of work that's required in order to just get a first draft together and say, like, yeah, this is the collection, this is what it's going to be.
Yeah.
But that's when you see it take shape, and that's when you really start to think, yes, this is going to happen. And that's when you start to think, take it more seriously yourself in a way. That's how I found it.
That's why I think like the word curation is so applicable to anthologies, because it's like, if people think about curating, they think about a museum or they think about an art gallery or something along those lines. And it's like, yeah, literally, this is someone who is envisioning an aesthetic, envisioning an experience, and they are piecing together the different parts of this conglomerate tangible thing that will then be like the most representative form of experience that they have available to them, based on like, okay, these are all the authors and these are all the stories that I can get. These are the ones that I found. These are the people that I have access to. These are the people I have relationships with. And you just piece all that together, and literally you are curating an experience. It's not just like, okay, like send me your stories and that's it. And then it's just like, you know, whoever sends your story first ends up being the first one in the anthology. It's like, no, literally it's like every step of the way, like the order of the stories, the different lengths, the different, I mean, in the case of the Book of Spores, the different genres as well are kind of like all impacting the ways in which we rearrange these stories to be in conversation with one another, but also be in conversation with like the greater whole of what this anthology is trying to do and trying to say and trying to evoke to people who pick it up and read it.
I'm really glad someone else has taken on the curator, the role on board.
I mean, that's like I brought like all of my design experience to that as well, because it's like in the sense of, you know, we were talking before we started about like packaging and stuff like that, and I'm a big proponent of like, you know, I've talked with a lot of friends about this idea of like, your idea starts out as a project, but then you have to kind of transition to this point where you think about it as a product. And so we call it like the project to product pipeline. And in that process, you have to start thinking about like, okay, as this thing becomes a product, how do I package it? And what's important in terms of how the design, how the typography, how the cover art, all these different elements convey what this thing is about as a product. Because the product and the way that the product is conveyed will then inform people's expectations about what the project is. And then once they link those two together and they pick it up and they read it, or in the case of like a Kickstarter, you know, like I put a lot of effort into just the way that the Kickstarter looks and the way that the book is designed. So it's like all this kind of stuff, like working with Jeff on the cover, working with him on the typography and all these different kinds of things. That aesthetic representation of the project as a product goes a long way to give people the sense of like, this is something that I will invest money in. This is something that I will invest time in. And then that expectation meets with the project itself and the creative side of it. And hopefully there's like a really nice kind of meshing of those two sides of it. But if you have like a really misaligned kind of dissonant connection between the packaging and the product side of it and the project, then that's when people go on Goodreads and leave like a 1 star and be like, this is shit. You know, like it didn't meet my expectations, or, you know, they felt that it was marketed to them in a way that was not truthful, or, you know, it's like human psychology is really weird in that way, in which like visual storytelling goes a long way to set people's expectations for what the rest of their experience will be. And so it could even be something as like, oh, my Amazon package was like damaged, like 1 star. And it's like, that's not the actual book itself. That's just like a packaging, but it's still, all of it connects because people are just weird that way.
Yeah, you've got to represent the book at every level, and I think aesthetically is a really important one. But I think it's we've chatted about this before with Adrian and Eleni, sort of like when we were putting together the orders for the stories and figuring it out. We were talking about albums of music, and we were likening it to that, because when you listen to an album of music, it's not the case where every track's the same. You in order to listen from beginning to end, there has to be that variation, there has to be that journey, there has to be all of that. And it's the same when putting together an anthology, and that's something that I really love about Sinophagia and Sinopticon, and also Anatomy of Fear. We've all done it. We've all looked at it and gone, right, okay, how do we put this together that's going to get people reading from beginning to end, so they all feels complete together, but at the same time there's enough variation there that people aren't going to be worn out, because, you know, we've got all of the fast-paced stories together, or then the slow ones come later. It's like you can do that with Kill Bill, but you can't do that with like anthology, right? So this is where it's just one of those things where there's so much thought that goes into what we've talked about with curation, that it's more effort than just sort of just grouping a whole bunch of things together and feeding it in and going, there you go, that works, you know.
It's like a roller coaster, man. You got to have like the ups and the downs and the curves and the things that will, you know, and the twists and all that kind of stuff. Like, you don't want to be repetitive in terms of like which stories feel a little bit too kind of close together, whether it's in terms of length or like theme or something like that. There's a lot of ways that you can kind of divvy things up and be like, okay, we have a shorter story here that's like, you know, 4 or 5K, and then we have like a Crystal Matar, like Cassie, like quasi novelette kind of thing, and just like
that sounds so unlike Crystal.
I know. I feel like we've been like, she's the longest in the entire anthology. I feel like we've been taking the piss a little bit, but like, we love you, Crystal, and the story's actually really awesome. But it's like, give that variation, give that difference in pacing, and that difference in genre, and that difference in content, and all that kind of stuff really goes a long way to help the reader kind of remain engaged with something, even though it's like every story is its own distinct end, but it's not necessarily the end of the entire anthology.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be totally honest, guys, I've forgotten what the original question was, so I'm not going to add anything to it. I am going to shout out, we've got a couple of people in the chat, so just to say hi to Connor, Fancy and Sci-Fi, Fanatic is in the chat. Hi, Daniel.
Hi, Daniel.
I believe there was a couple of other people as well, but I can't scroll back up, so hello to everybody. Daniel actually did have a couple of questions, so I can see you answered the one about how many authors and stories there are in the Book of Spores. But I do.
The thing is, so go on, Adrian. I was going to say that they
no. Go for it, soft serve. It's all you.
That's how it's going to be known now forever.
I'll give you a delicious scoop of an answer. So 16 short stories at the moment, plus a framing story sort of that travels across the anthology, plus an introduction from Adrian. But if we reach 35,000 in the Kickstarter, then that will increase to 17 short stories, because the legendary Adrian M. Gibson is going to contribute an additional story if we hit that target.
We're only like $815 from getting to that stretch goal. So
that's awesome. We could do it by the end of this stream.
If everyone in here gets the colony tier, we'll hit 35K.
That'd be awesome.
A few hours and then onto the stretch goal. Really amazing.
I want to talk a little bit again generally about anthologies in a minute, but I do want to take just this quick opportunity, seeing as Daniel brought it up, to peek behind the curtain a little bit, if you will, of the Book of Spores. I want to know a little bit of backstage gossip. I want to know who finished their story first, who pushed themselves out of their comfort zone. I would ask who had the longest story, but we all know it was Crystal. So
Frasier is actually such a gossip, so this is a perfect.
I know, right?
I mean, you know him well, Holly. It's like give me the scoop,
this is
soft serve.
Targeted question.
Give me the scoop is literally like, that should be my new thing. Forget part-time robot, full-time nerd. It should be like, give me the scoop. I feel like it's dangerous to answer these kinds of questions with too directly. So what I'm going to say is that every single author has a very different journey into this anthology. There were authors who wrote their stories within a matter of minutes, and sent them over. So they were like, right, I'm going to work on it today. I'm sending it over. And then 10 minutes later, you'd be like, great, thanks. And then there were other authors who were given a deadline and didn't finish sending their draft until a year and 3 months after that deadline. So it's like, it's very, very different experiences. What I will say is that within that, everyone has their own sensibilities and what they're happy with. And there are some authors who will write a story, send it in, and then say, I'm not really sure I'm happy with that being in the anthology. So then it's an awful lot of work to be able to help them either with their imposter syndrome or to help them to get the story why they are. And you know, I feel like the vast majority of the tea I'm unable to spill because so much of the anthology was in helping people to feel comfortable with their stories being there. And I hope that you heard all of that, because my screen, you were all going but there. So if I was doing the same, then
your
that got me
part-time
out of a
robot,
jam.
your part-time robot is glitching out a little bit.
Yeah, we've
So-
come to expect this from you, Frasier. It's fine, but
Yeah.
I think I got the general gist of what you were saying, and I want to jump on the word you used, imposter syndrome, there, because I mean, we all know, and as much as we hate to admit it, as creators, we are sensitive souls some of the time, and confidence is easily broken. So I'm interested to know, when working with people who are maybe not too confident, or dealing with imposter syndrome, or even just dealing with life in general getting in the way of projects, how do you manage that when you're trying to hit a deadline? Xueting, I'm going to come to you first on that one.
Yeah, thank you, Holly. It's a really good question. Yeah, it's kind of tricky, really. Maybe I think there's a certain amount of EQ, I think, involved in being the editor, curator of the anthology, because the writers, yeah, they're not just something that turns out a piece of work. They are people, and they have their lives, and especially most of the contributors to Sinophagia and Sinopticon, they have other jobs as, I mean, office workers or teachers or other things. So it's just taking that into account. But I've had very different responses, and I'm quite amused at the excuses that I've had from for China 100. This one I've had to commission new works from, where the deadline was quite tight. I've had a broken leg, surgery. There was an imposter syndrome one. There was a self-doubt, but that was like before she accepted, and yeah, that was dealt with. It. So yeah, there was these two, and then there was the mental health crisis as well. So I think it's just all sorts of different things, and you know, whilst I'm tempted to say, wouldn't writing a story help with this? Yeah. Wouldn't you rather be...
Or in my mind, like, how does a broken leg impede you from writing a story? You're sitting down already.
They write it with their feet, obviously.
Of course, man, with a foot keyboard.
Yeah, so as a production controller before, I'm always I always have like one eye on the schedule. But then I do think it depends on the person, really. Sometimes I think I can be a bit more lenient on the people I know that they'll stick to the few days when they say it's going to be a few days, and then others maybe need to be more of a push. So yeah, different approaches, being flexible, varying, and understanding. I think it's
yeah.
Kind of
I think there's just like a general rule of thumb is like, be empathetic and don't be an asshole about it. But also it's like you kind of have to put yourself in the role of like a parent, you know, where it's like, okay, are you like actually sick and don't want to go to school? Or are you just like giving me that bullshit cough that you just really don't want to go, and you're kind of like procrastinating and whatever it might be. And in the case of authors, it's like, you know, Frasier definitely dealt with more of the imposter syndrome and procrastination side of this anthology, but like I see it on the podcast as well. Like just the fact that SFF Addicts has like, you know, an interview portion, but then we also have like a masterclass portion, and people get kind of like caught off guard with the phrasing of like a masterclass, and they're like, I'm not a master of anything, you know, like I've had to genuinely like hype up authors who are like New York Times bestsellers or, you know, like award-winning authors and be like, okay, masterclass is just like a marketing term in this particular case. It's not like you're going to university or like, you know, teaching a course or doing like an actual masterclass for like the masterclass brand or something like that, right? It's literally just us having a conversation, you giving us some guidance in terms of what you want to talk about. We'll prepare the questions and all this kind of stuff. And so it's like even just a single word can really catch people off guard and make them doubt themselves despite the fact that they've achieved so much in their career. And like you said, Holly, like authors are very sensitive people. And Eleni kind of likens it to like herding cats. And so not only are we sensitive, we are also temperamental. And so
feral.
Often feral, some like very rarely cuddly, like it's just all over the place. And so it's like a lot of it is kind of trying to understand like where is this person coming from, what is the particular thing that they are having trouble with. Like even I went through this after releasing Mushroom Blues. Like there were so many things that it was like, you know, failure is one way of experiencing imposter syndrome, but so is success. And so is like SPFBO like completely fucked my head up, and I know it has for a lot of people who've been in SPFBO. And so there are like certain things that can just crop up and stifle you along the way and make you doubt your creativity and your ability to even do this thing to begin with. But a lot of it is just kind of like, you know, having the confidence to confide in people that you're close to. And in our case, it's like we're friends with everybody in this anthology. And so a lot of it is kind of just like being very kind and being very open and having these honest conversations with the other people and kind of working through their doubts and figuring out like, okay, what is it that's actually the problem here? And what can we do to, you know, kind of cool things down and get you to like a level head again, and then we make rational decisions afterwards.
Yeah, it's like you're always going to be dealing with people who want to drop out for one reason or another, and it's then a case of, you know, at that point you're like, well, no, because what you're amazing and what you've produced is amazing and it would be great for the anthology, but it's how do you get that across to them in a way that they are willing to accept, because you don't want to put pressure on creators at the same time. So it is a very difficult sort of like tight wire. It's a balancing act how you interact with authors. That some, if you're watching this and thinking, right, I want to put an anthology together, one of the other responses that you might get, as well as sort of like, you know, if you're approaching debut authors, they might not feel like they're like good enough to be sort of like put into an anthology. If you're approaching some very experienced high profile authors, you may have to end up justifying the existence of the anthology and their place within it, because they might be like, well, it's a bit beneath me, you know. so you then have to sort of be like, well, actually this anthology is awesome and this is why we want you in it. So it's one of those things of, you have to, again, it goes back to passion. You have to love it, and as a creator you can understand where people are coming from, you can understand their perspective. So, you know, creators, I think, and writers are great people to put anthologies together, because they understand the nature of the artist, which is something that maybe, you know, if a publishing house was commissioning an anthology, there might not be the same level of understanding. So it's been really helpful being a writer putting together an anthology. And if you are watching this thing having never written a word, please go write a story before you start asking for others. It would be a really useful exercise for you to do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I will say though, go ahead, Xueting.
Oh, sorry, Adrian.
Go for it.
I'm working with a publisher and another party who's funding the project on this current one, and it's quite different. And as you say, it's kind of helpful having an editor like myself who curates the works, that's passionate about the theme and the writers, really care about the writers. I can see that the publisher and the other party, they have different agendas. And and then just wanted to add that the political climate in China changed. Kind of halfway through this anthology, China 100 Plus, which is themed around the pandemic, it became very kind of sensitive subject within a few months, and I was really surprised who dropped out, who stayed in, and the kind of conversations I've had to have with certain people, and who then changed their minds and who I pulled out. It was really a revelation, and one thing it came down to was relationship with the writers, having worked with them and know them, and they know that I have their interests. That I think that really made a difference.
That's exactly what I wanted to talk about, was like the relationship between, because even if like the editor is primarily an editor, those relationships go such a long way. Like you can, what Frasier was saying about maybe there's like an author who is, I don't think anyone's going to literally say that's beneath me. I would be surprised if anyone was that.
I've said it in other ways.
Yeah, they'll say it in other ways, but it goes a long way to have developed these relationships beforehand. And I was talking to Emily Inkpen about this, in the sense of like, she was just joking. Like, people have asked me, like, what do I need to do in order to basically run a successful Kickstarter? And she's like, beyond social media for at least a couple of years beforehand, and like actually put in the time to build a rapport with people, develop a sense of community, and foster these relationships with people. Because it's a lot easier to go up to someone who you've had multiple interactions with and a really good rapport with, and say like, hey, I'm thinking about putting this anthology together. Would you be interested in taking part? And obviously like respect their profession, and pay authors. Like if you're doing an indie Kickstarter anthology, like think about ways that you can basically finance it, keeping in mind that like these authors deserve professional rates and all that kind of stuff, before you decide like I'm gonna put together a Kickstarter anthology. But having those relationships kind of already set in stone, and having the confidence to go up to somebody and say like, hey, I really love your work, and I would like to invite you to do this project with me, be a part of this anthology, and everything that you've done beforehand kind of feeds into this person's perception of you. And if they have a good perception of you and your kind of role as a friend, but also your role as like a professional within this community and within the publishing industry, it's way more likely that someone's going to be like, I would love to work with you, or at the very least say, I'm unfortunately not able to do it, but not say it in a way that's as crass as this is beneath me.
Basically, if you want to put an anthology together, just get me, Adrian, and Eleni to do it. Like it'll be fine. Like we'll be a hype guys. Like and Xueting, get Xueting to do it, and Holly to do it. But just reach out and talk to people who have had that experience, because like it's a good thing that somebody's coming up and saying, what will it take for me to run a successful Kickstarter, to people who've done it. It's, don't just sort of like type your questions into the ether, and into the void. Talk to the people who've had success, because you'll get the best feedback that way.
Yeah. And everyone will have had different ways of doing it. Everyone will have had different measures of success and approaches to it. And I just want to add on as well, I think that to put something like this together can actually invoke a sense of imposter syndrome in you as the person who is project managing. And that's quite normal and natural. It's it's normal to feel nervous about approaching authors, especially if they're ones that you admire. I mean, I remember putting together The Anatomy of Fear, and my goal, my absolute hashtag goals, was to get Zamil Akhtar involved. You know, King of Cosmic Horror. Yeah, who else would I want in a fantasy horror anthology? And I sent off an email. I think my hands were shaking the entire time, and I think I got an email back in a few days, and he just went, "Yeah, all right, I'm in." And I was like, "Oh, okay, that was easier than I thought."
Yeah. I mean, Frasier saw me at World Fantasy Con. I mean, because like the Book of Spores is not the only anthology that we're working on. Like this was kind of a test case for what we can do in the future. And Frasier was like, I think at one point we were in the bar and I just like dipped off and like had a conversation with a particular person. I came back to Frasier afterwards and he's just like, dude, you're hustling, like hustling, you know? And it's like, yeah, man, like I've just went up to these people and like, what better opportunity to invite someone to participate in an anthology or to collaborate with them in some sense than like being physically with them in the same room and, you know, having had that like, you know, years and years of talking to each other, interacting with each other and building that relationship and then getting this opportunity. I was like, yeah, of course I'm going to hustle, dude. Like, you know, I told you, I'm like a mullet, man. Like, you know, business in the front, party in the back.
Yeah.
This is why I make sure I have FaceTime with people when I'm in China, because a lot of the writers I never even met face to face. I've been working with them for a few years, and it's really exciting actually to actually meet them face to face. But with new writers that you want to find or writers you want to work with, that you make the effort to go and meet them. It really makes a difference to the when later you want to work with them or the opportunity comes up.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, there's a phrase that I like to try and remember with these, and it's the best things lie just outside your comfort zone, which sounds very corporate, I know, but it is true.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
there's
it's like these phrases that you find in like, I don't know, like you go to these dumb stores like Bed Bath and Beyond or whatever, and it's just like, you know,
like a mug phrase.
Yeah, like a mug phrase, or like someone like, you know, those things are like bathroom decorations of like, you know, love, laugh, live, or whatever the fuck. Like, it's like actually life is really good when you laugh and you love. It's just it's really corny, but it actually goes a long way. And like stepping outside of your comfort zone, and that's something like SFF Addicts really pushed me to do, is like step outside your comfort zone and like invite people that you never in a million years think that you would get a yes from or would be able to interact with. And it's just like, you never know what will happen, honestly. Like the panel that we did at Worldcon was like literally like the biggest authors in the entire industry, but that was just because the program director was like, hey, who do you want to invite and what do you want the topic to be? And I was like, I can invite anyone I want. And then she gave me the list of the entire program participants, and I was like, George R. Martin, can you put me in touch with his team? And then she was like, yeah, sure. And it was literally that. Like, that was it. And it was just my decision to push a little bit past my comfort zone and think like, I'll try and email George R. Martin's team, because like, why not? And if he says no, he's not gonna tell me I'm beneath him. He's just gonna do it in a polite way. And it's not even like directly with him. It's like with his assistant or whoever on his team, kind of thing. And so it doesn't feel like as much of like a personal slight. But in the end, it's like he said yes. And so those kinds of things happen when you take those chances and step outside your comfort zone and think beyond like, you know, who would say yes to me, or like who would say yes to this anthology or to my podcast or whatever it may be. And it's like, the only way you can find out is if you try. And if you don't try, it's never going to happen. So just try. And if it makes you feel uncomfortable, like you with Zamil, it made you feel like anxious for like 10 seconds while you were hitting send on that email. And then he got back to you and it was all awesome and he accepted, and now he's a part of that anthology. So,
yeah.
But like putting the Kickstarter together is another really good example of that, because like I was so anxious and nervous about, you know, seeing whether we would get support for this. And I was like, I was talking to Adrian and I was like, yeah, but what about this? What about this? What about, are you sure we're doing the right thing with this? Are you sure we're doing that? And then just look at the support that we've had over this Kickstarter. It's been phenomenal. And the people who've backed
Just
it
like
are
3
just
days, man. It's been wild.
it's incredible. And it's like, we're so grateful to every single person that's pledged. But that is a great example of, look, if you don't try, you'll never know. And and it just goes to show that Adrian is always right about everything. So good lesson learned.
Not true, but sure.
It's believing in the themes, taking that risk, whether it's going for that author, the author you feel like you feel nervous approaching, or going for that Kickstarter, or going for the theme that you really believe in, a book on mushrooms, or in my case, I was lucky with Sinopticon in that sci-fi they just won the Hugo and before I got the contract, but then the Sinophagia was completely cold. Nobody knew anything about Chinese horror, and people in China didn't want to write horror, and seemed crazy, but I really saw the great work, and I want great works in China. I wanted to show the world, and now I've ended up doing similar things with these last next two anthologies, the queer anthology, showcasing it from within China, what it's like within China, and also the China 100, which is on this theme, which then became a bit iffy, but you carry on with it because you believe in it and you think it's worth doing, and then it really works out if you just hold on and it.
I mean, it's what we were talking about earlier. It's like this is a passion project, and it's like if you don't have enough passion to sustain this thing, then it's probably not something you're willing to do. So like if you really believe in it, and I'm really glad that so many people at FanFiAddict were like, yeah, let's do mushrooms. And I was like, oh fuck yeah, this is like perfect for me. Then we can all just kind of pour our passion into it and keep pushing forward. And now it's kind of like culminated in a Kickstarter that we're super happy with. And we couldn't have imagined that it like would have gone this well, or that people would be like this into mushrooms. And even if they're just into the aesthetic, like that's totally cool. If you want to have this thing on your shelf, like I'm 100% fine with that, because this thing is like a piece of art, right? But at the same time, it just shows that it's like culture can shift in pretty dramatic ways. And it's like Xueting, the fact that doing an anthology about a pandemic, or an anthology with queer authors about like queer experiences and stuff like that in a country like China, especially after COVID and everything that happened there, or like the cultural climate around queerness in China, these anthologies can go a long way in kind of moving the conversation along and kind of opening up new doors and new opportunities for people to discuss these things. It's like if people want more fungal fiction and they find it in the Book of Spores, amazing, and it's like if someone living in China or someone like a queer person in China wanting to be able to talk more openly about these things, or be able to talk more openly about what happened during the pandemic by reading fiction, that's a beautiful thing. And that's something that fiction does so well. It gives us opportunities to contextualize things that are happening in the real world, but we don't necessarily have the right means of communicating it with other people or even to ourselves.
And
that's what I tell the writers when they express doubt about their safety, their security due to the sensitive subject. That it's being talked about all around the world, and we need to be part of the debate. But I seem to be mining deeper and deeper into certain things, and it's getting harder not to find stories, but to access them. But I can see great queer stories and great people want to say a lot about the pandemic, particularly in China, where they've had a lot of a lot of experiences, a lot of trauma about it.
Mm-hmm.
They need to talk about it.
Yeah.
And once you put that across, there will be writers that will they be convinced, and they will stay on board.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was going to say that I think there's a lot that you can experiment with when you're putting together an anthology when it comes to either the hook or the theme or the concepts or anything like that. I think what's great about Sinopticon and Sinophagia is that it's all fresh, it's all new, it's completely original and different. And even like Sinophagia, I remember talking to you, Xueting, and you were saying about how difficult it was to put together Sinophagia, and you wouldn't think it would be difficult after Sinopticon, but horror being having such a stigma around it in China, and just the difficulties there, I don't think people realize just how bold it was to attempt something like that, and I think with us in the Book of Spores, we wanted to put something together that nobody had seen in any other anthology before. We wanted to put together something new, something fresh, and we managed to do that at just the right time, and I think that's, if you are putting an anthology together, go find other anthologies that have done that have taken those bold new steps, and think about what's the new direction this anthology is going to take. Because if you're just sort of repeating something that's been done really well already, then you're not going to get the same kind of support as something where, or you're not going to get that same kind of passion from the readers as people who are reading things that are new for the first time. And I think that's something that's really important with anthologies to try and achieve, in order for it to land as hard as you want it to.
I think that's why theme is such a difficult thing. Like, Holly, I really love the approach that you had with the Anatomy of Fear, and it's kind of like using different body parts to convey this notion of fear and how it's explored through different avenues, but also through the lenses of different authors. But then there's like so many themes, and especially I think this is especially true in indie, where theme tends to be like the big kind of focal point of anthologies and like Kickstarters and things like that. And it's like, especially when you get into things like fantasy and epic fantasy, it's like, okay, like it's another anthology about like revenge, or another anthology about XYZ. And no shade to any of those, and like a lot of them have done a really, really good job with that. But I'm just saying, it's kind of like there are ways that you can figure out how to be original in the context of anthologies and use that format to really push the boundaries, especially in indie, where it's like you don't have a trad publisher kind of like pressuring you to conform to any one set of expectations, whether it's like from a sales department, whether it's doubt in regards to a certain genre or something like that. In indie, it's like you can push those boundaries on an individual level as a self-published author, but then you can also do that on a broader level, on like a collaborative level with anthologies and with Kickstarters and things like that.
Yeah, but just be careful that you don't go so off the wall. Like, our backup idea was like cannibals who only eat feet. So, I don't think it would have gone quite as well as like the Book of Spores,
I think mushrooms are more palatable. This day and age.
I think between the four of us, the Chinese horror, fungal fantasy, and body horror, cannibals who only eat feet could work really well.
Let's do
it.
It's happening. It's happening. Yeah. Let's do it now.
Yeah, the second one in the series.
Yeah.
I think if you're something big with the Book of Spores, certainly fungal, fungi does seem to be the future. The future does seem to be fungi in many ways. I mean, we're seeing it in science fiction, we're seeing it in films, and we're seeing it I'm seeing it in China 100 plus, and that's totally not coordinated. I did not know you were going to curate a Book of Spores, but there are a few that have imagined kind of mushroom related futuristic landscapes.
Yeah, I mean, like I finished watching season 3 of Foundation, and there's like the if anyone's read like the Isaac Asimov series, it's based on
Yeah.
those books. And in the basically city-wide planet of Trantor, there's like sublevels, and one of those sublevels is like called Mycogen, and it's basically like an entire sublevel of people who are essentially like mushroom farmers, and they're providing a lot of the food, like a lot of the like sort of like mycelium and like mycelial substrate and fungi and all that kind of stuff goes into like the food production of this citywide planet. And so it's kind of like they're lower class and everything like that. But it got into like super trippy psychedelic stuff, and like the main character, like has like a crazy mushroom trip. And I'm like, yeah, this is an Apple TV show, and it's just like I know The Last of Us kind of like broke the cultural mold, not to like be too on the nose about it, um in terms of like pop culture perceptions of mushrooms. And so it's like, yes, it started with the video games, but I don't think it was until the HBO show that it really blew up in the way that it has. And as a result of that, it's like, yeah, we've seen so many books like fantasy and horror and whatever else incorporating fungi or like being centered around fungi in the past, but it seems like in the last few years, like I just dropped Mushroom Blues at like the perfect time kind of thing. And like I think the Book of Spores is kind of, a continuation of that. But it's very strange. It's very hard to pinpoint like what the cultural zeitgeist is going to be at any given time, or like what's going to be big. And I think this crazy confluence of like different people from different backgrounds writing in different genres or creating things in different mediums, all being interested in mushrooms at the same time is just one of those strange things that it's like it's inexplicable, and that's why I always tell people like don't chase the trends, especially when it comes to publishing in genre, because you're going to be too late by the time it ends up getting published. And the benefit of something like indie is like you can really experiment a lot and push the envelope and create trends. And so I think it's just a really beautiful example of like these cultural forces kind of commingling, and something like mushrooms becoming like a really big kind of sticking point in a lot of people's minds and their perceptions of like how to tell a story, or like what this world is going to be, or perceptions of the future, or whatever it may be.
It's very much a case whereby we didn't try to jump on a bandwagon. What
Yeah.
we did, we put together something that we thought would be awesome, and then it just so happens that it's coincided really well with what a lot of people are looking for
Mm-hmm.
right now, which is
Yep.
brilliant, and that works out for us great. But like, it might be a while before people start looking out for cannibals who only eat feet. But when that happens, we'll have something that'll be ready, But
Frasier will be your champion whenever that day comes.
Yeah. So, to kind of summarize the key takeaways. Sorry, did I jump in then?
Go for it, Xueting.
Sorry.
Yeah. I was going to say, yeah. We have the opportunity to start trends, as you say, Adrian. There's and also something whether it's body horror or mushroom sci-fi, you publish the book or you commission the book, and then all of a sudden it becomes really popular. It's because you're in tune with the SFF vibe,
Mm-hmm.
because you can feel it almost. Like that's certainly how I get the next idea to to do the next anthology if I originate it myself.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like having that gut feeling about like what is the general vibe. Like, I mean, it sounds a little bit like woo woo spiritual kind of shit, but like it really is, like you start to get a vibe from your interactions with other people in the community. And like I have friends in the SFF world where we didn't meet because we're into SFF or because we're writers or because of whatever other thing. It's literally because of mushrooms, and so it's like that being like the foundation of like many of my relationships with people, and that opening up doors to talk about spiritualism to talk about these big concepts that really encapsulate so much of what it means to be human, you know, like the experience of living and the experience of death and consciousness and all these things that have been really, you know, deeply ingrained into SFF for a long time. You know, it's like, especially you go back to like read like SFF from like the 60s and 70s, it's like so fucking cerebral and crazy and weird. And I feel like now is a time where people are starting to veer away from more commercial stuff, you know. I'd not to belittle any of it, but it's like pop fiction in a lot of ways. And mushrooms is just one of those avenues through which people can engage more deeply with the thematic content of the stories that they're reading. And it's not just mushrooms. It's like there's so many different things that are creating a more engaging experience for people who don't necessarily always want or don't want at all to have these more like popcorn kind of entertainment experiences.
What you'll find as well is that because you are a creator within that space, which is what Xueting was saying, is that you're tapped into also the things that kind of space is passionate about. So for example, as soon as we mentioned, right, we're going to do it on the Book of Spores, and as soon as that idea clicked for people, they were like, this is cool, because that idea is cool, because like we know what's cool for people like that. It's a little bit like if I was to say to you, right, okay, we're going to do an anthology all about sentient octopuses. Everyone would be like, yeah, that's really cool, right? And it wouldn't be hard to find
Adrian
a load of
Tchaikovsky
people.
would be like, fuck yes.
Yeah,
Even though he
you've
never
got like
swears.
Ray Naylor with like The Mountain and the Sea. You've got so
Yeah,
many
man.
different people who would be like, yeah, this is awesome, right? Because that's just cool, right? So if you come up with like a theme or a concept and you think, right, okay, this really, really works for me, try it out on a few different author friends. And if they're like, yeah, this is cool, you know you've got something. And it doesn't matter what's happening in the market at the time that you release, because your idea is great. And I think that's the thing that you want to look for. Like Chinese sci-fi always will be cool, right? Body horror, cosmic body horror always will be cool, right? It's like you land on an idea, and if it's great, you know it straight away, and you only need like a couple of conversations to reaffirm it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Frasier. That's exactly what I mean. It's an intuition you get from your reading, you're talking to people in the community. It's like a radar.
Yeah.
It is. I'm going to have to jump in. I'm going to be bad cop now because I'm aware we've probably got about 15, 20 minutes left, and we're on question 3 of 15. So I'm going to skip ahead to the end here.
But I think we have covered a lot of stuff that we've
covered a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
We definitely have. I mean, I think so far
No,
my main
I'm here for the all
takeaways-
15, Holly. I'm yeah. What's number 4? Like...
Frasier's gonna be up until like 6 a.m.
I mean, I think my takeaways so far are: be bold, be brave, be original, and email George R.R. Martin because you never know, he might say yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's just talk a little. There was a question that Daniel asked in the chat, and we sort of went off on a bit of a tangent. So I want to just jump back onto that. So Daniel's asked, what did you find was the hardest aspect of collecting and prepping the stories from all the different authors? And I just want to add to that as well. I'm interested to know what surprised you in doing this project.
I would say like the consistency of how awesome the stories are. It was really surprising. I was like really nervous about getting all of these different stories in, and about having to say to people, "Oh, I'm sorry, it's not quite there. You know, we can't have this one in the anthology or anything like that." Everything just worked, and it was just like we were getting even to the point because we gave people total freedom to write whatever they wanted, as long as it had. We didn't even tell them that this book, what it was going to be doing through their stories. We just said, look, as long as your book has a reference, as long as your story has a reference at some point to the Book of Spores, then you can write whatever you want. As long as you want, you know, whatever, you know, it's all good.
For some people that was awesome, and for others,
they were like, just tell me what to write. But in terms of the way that it all came together, everybody's story is so different. Nobody has sort of like, you know, dropped the ball on it. Everybody every single story getting it, it was like, yes, this builds on the last, and they don't even know that it builds on the last. It was like, it was just perfect. And that that surprised me, because I thought we were going to get a lot more headaches in the developmental sort of stages, and instead it's just been really nice. And if there was feedback to give to them that would make it stronger so that as a whole it worked, then I just framed it like that, and I just said, look, can you change this aspect of your story so that as a whole the stories work together? Because I waited to give everybody their developmental feedback until most of the stories had come in already. So that was a really good thing to be able to do, because then I could vary things up to keep it fresh from beginning to end for people. So I would say like that was one of the hardest things, is actually just helping the authors to just understand that any changes that you ask them to make is for the greater whole, because they might really love that aspect of their story and you're asking them to change it because some other people have written other stories, and it's like, no, you've got to be able to find the right way of being able to get them on board for the project and not just their part of it as well.
Become the hive mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. Xueting, what about
Does that
you?
answer
Have
the
you
question?
found anything that particularly... It did, Frasier, thank you. Did you find anything that particularly kind of surprised you, that you hadn't expected from taking on these projects?
A couple of things. One is how some writers can be tempted to write in a different genre. Like people who are horror writers, they don't usually work in sci-fi. Some of them have been like, oh, I don't know. And then I talk to them about it, and we discuss the the plots and the brief, and they are like, okay, I'll give it a go. And then they come up with this really quite brilliant story. So things like that has surprised me. And one of my major takeaways from this, all of this at the moment, is if you've got other projects going on, don't do 2 anthologies at the same time. It's not a good idea. That's what I've ended up doing, and it's really exhausting.
Yeah, that's the voice of experience there. I mean, I think we're all guilty of that at times, just taking on too much.
Too much at once.
Yeah. What about you, Adrian? You've got anything that's particularly surprised you?
I think from my perspective, it's just the because we talked about kind of the reader experience and like the way that the anthologies are kind of like organized and stuff like that. But I think something that is really interesting is like the way that authors' voices come through their stories. And it's not necessarily just like an anthology is about making everyone's voice sound the same. It's kind of like, imagine it's a choir and you're trying to get everyone's voices, whatever tone, whatever, like if someone's like a falsetto and someone's a baritone or something like that, it's not about like, I want you to sound exactly the same or I want you to sing the exact same part. It's kind of like, I want all of this to feel cohesive and for all of these different voices to feel in tune with one another, such that this entire composition feels like a cohesive whole. And so the cool thing about like going through all the different stories was like, yeah, everybody has a different voice. Like they're different like authorial intent and they're different manners of speech and writing and dialogue and all those different kinds of things. It's like no 2 authors are ever going to have the same sort of like style of prose. But the cool thing is like reading through all these stories, like what Frasier was saying, that it there was just like such a through line in terms of like the vibe and the cohesion of it. And I was really surprised by the fact that the voices of all these authors, regardless of the fact that their stories are all so different, really worked well together. And to me, felt like it was the choir that was in tune. Every member was in tune with like what the objective was of being in the same anthology and working around the same frame story, and yet each author was able to tell something that was really unique, but all of those unique elements combined into something that was really beautiful. So that to me was kind of like the coolest part of it. It was like, yeah, like voice is a fucking hard thing to kind of, I don't know, just like pinpoint about any one particular person. You know, it's just like it's a vibe. It's something that you read and you feel, and the vibe of all of these different authors' voices coming together felt really cohesive, and obviously like made things a lot easier for us, where it wasn't like, okay, here's like some like very clear like dissonant black sheep or anything like that. It was like so seamless in a lot of ways. Like we didn't have a lot of struggle, you know. There were like obviously in developmental edits things that we had to kind of push back and talk with the authors about and whatever, but on the whole this choir was singing fucking beautifully. So
Yeah, it's like that's a really good analogy, and or you could also use the analogy of like an orchestra. The choir master or the conductor of an orchestra, you don't hear them. You're not supposed to hear them.
mm-hmm.
And our role in putting this together is to put out a book where people are reading it and they don't see our input on the editorial phase. They just see the stories from the authors and they feel the stories from the authors. Because
Mm-hmm.
if you were to read those stories and think, oh yeah, this has quite clearly been edited by, you know, by Eleni or by Adrian or Ed or Frasier, we failed, right? Because we've taken on a part that is not ours, right? Our part is to stay silent and let the authors do the work. And when you trust that, I mean, Xueting's got it in like a completely other like side of that with translation. You know, the role of the translator and the role of the author. Again, like it's all part of that. So I think if you are putting an anthology together, be prepared that, you know, as you're doing all of this, all the work you're doing is not going to be seen. And that's a really good thing.
Frasier almost didn't want to put his own name on the cover.
Yeah,
and I had to guilt him into doing it.
I think you have two roles. One is as the putting the anthology together. Maybe that's not so visible, but as the editors, I think your role can be to pull the whole thing together with your foreword or intro or something, something like that, to put it into context.
Yep.
With something that's translated, I find that I really wanted to celebrate the difference between the different type pieces. So, but they were united in their quality. They were great quality writing, although they were different themes. They were the same genre, different styles, and I think that I really wanted to make sure I bring out the author's own voices, that I, you know, almost interrupt the cohesion in that way, but in my intro and the post story comments, I needed to introduce this regional genre to the world, and that was the cohesion. But in the individual stories themselves, I tried to keep different voices and channel. That's the invisible part. It's better if the reader reads this and doesn't think it's translated by me or translated at all. So it's kind of you have a dual role.
Yeah, I think that's a great analogy. The idea of the invisible conductor behind everything, bringing together this choir or the orchestra. I am very aware that in about 7 minutes' time, it's going to be the witching hour. Frasier is going to turn back into a pumpkin. So before
he's pumpkin flavored soft serve is what he's going to
yes, before he turns back
I'm going to go
pumpkin
from vanilla to pumpkin. Yeah.
He gets a little bit spicy. Before we wrap up, I want to just do a quick check-in. I don't know, Adrian or Frasier, if you want to take this, because for anyone who's watching who hasn't yet had a chance to look at the Kickstarter, I mean, you guys are fully funded. You fully funded in about 5 minutes, which is absolutely outstanding.
50 minutes, but...
Was it 50? I mean, I thought it was 5. So...
5 would have been unbelievable. Holy shit.
But what's the next milestone that you guys are kind of heading for now?
Yeah, so right now, I mean, we fully funded in 15 minutes, which was just unbelievable, and we're really grateful to everyone who's contributed to the project so far. Like we just launched on Thursday, and we're already coming up on $35,000. And so our goal was 10,000. We've blown past
Smashed
that,
it.
absolutely. So We're about like $800 away from 35K, which means we hit our next stretch goal. So that's a bonus short story by me, which is set in my Fungalverse shared universe where Mushroom Blues is set. And then we're also going to get embossed dust jackets. So Jeff Brown, who did the cover art, is going to do some cool embossed details on the dust jacket. And then after that, we've got our next stretch goal, which will be for faux leather hardcover case, which we're really excited about. We tried to get mushroom leather, but it's really expensive. It would have been like the most meta thing ever to literally have this book made out of mushrooms, but that's not how economics works. So if we hit our next stretch goal, we're going to get the faux leather. We're also going to get increased payouts to all of our authors. So every few stretch goals, we're basically like increasing the amount that they get paid by 30%, which is a really nice way for backers to be able to give back to the authors themselves, not just to the project, the editors and everyone involved in the production and distribution, that kind of thing. So yeah, please, if we can get to 35K, amazing. Let's try and get to the next stretch goal, 50K. And basically, like, we're only like 3 days in. We've got like 18 days left of this Kickstarter, but we're already super happy with how it's been going. And we're really grateful to everyone who's backed the project so far. Yeah, I mean, if you're interested in like fungal stories, but also just like a really beautiful deluxe edition hardcover, this is the only time you're ever going to be able to get this edition of the anthology with, beautiful hardcover case with the incredible dust jacket by Jeff, like silver foiling, sprayed edges. I've done like all the interior design, and it's really trippy and crazy, and kind of matches up with like the fungal aesthetic of the package as a whole. But yeah, we hope you back it. There's like a QR code right here if you just want to scan that and go check out the Kickstarter page.
Yeah, and it's one of them things where, it's already surpassed any, like, all of our expectations and hopes and dreams, and it's absolutely amazing. But the longer that the Kickstarter goes on, the more you realize how incredible it could be if we were to reach all of our stretch goals, because then what we could produce is something that is just the absolute most deluxe version of it, which is something we would really love to give to everybody who has poured so much support into the project. So we're always looking at trying to sort of make sure that the product is as amazing as possible. So if we can reach our stretch goals, all of them, what people will receive is going to be something that is so beyond special. I can't wait to be for people to see what it is that we've got planned for this. Yeah. But if we can get there, that would be amazing. But for everything that's already happened with this, we're just so grateful, and we're so grateful we're able to do this, and it's all thanks to you guys. So yeah, huge shout of love to everybody who's backed us so far.
Yeah. And to Jeff for the cover, to everyone on our team who's helped out with this project, to all the authors, to Merrick Books, who's helping us on like the sort of like management, production, distribution side of things. Like we're just really grateful to everyone who's been helping out with this, like Holly, Xueting for being here with us, like everyone who's helped us out with the cover reveal, with spreading the word, with taking part in the book tour and helping us promote this thing has been really amazing. So thank you all.
And we're really pleased for you, the success that it's had. Before we go, I do want to give everyone a chance to just individually talk a little bit about what projects they've got coming up, and I think they might want to promo. Xueting, what have you got coming up, and where can people find your work if they want to have a read?
Yeah, so I'm working on China 100 Plus anthology, the queer anthology that we're trying to find a home for at the moment. That's got quite far down the line already. Lots of great work I'm really excited to share. I'm also working on a book about wuxia storytelling. That's martial arts fantasy storytelling. My social media, I'm mainly on Blue Sky and on, which is at Xueting C, Blue Sky Social, and then on Instagram is Snow Pavilion, and my website is snowpavilion.co.uk. So yeah, do connect and stay tuned. Definitely more exciting, longer projects that are out next year. This year has been mainly short projects.
And also go
Awesome.
check out Sinophagia. Go check out Sinopticon. Like all of Xueting's amazing projects. Yeah.
Thank you.
If you can't wait for what Xueting's got coming, go check out the stuff that already exists.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Frasier, what have you got coming up?
So I mean, I've got like the Book of Spores is coming up. There is yeah, lots of different projects on the way. I've got a paperback that will soon hopefully make its way into the world of A Stitch Between Worlds, which is going to be amazing to actually get physical copies of that. Got another book that is ready to come out in the new year at some point. I think we're looking around about March for that, so that'll be cool. And then I've got lots of things that I'm working on at the moment. Yeah, thanks, Adrian. As Cage of Stars. Yeah, I have a copy. My very dear friend Eleni sent me a copy of my own book because I didn't have any, which was absolutely lovely of her. And I left it in a completely different room. So that tells you like I'm baby steps at marketing.
He's on the ball, man. It's in the same house. Does that
Yeah.
count?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It is here, I promise.
It's here.
But yeah, and check out the books. You got, Yes Tomorrow, New Yesterday, Time's Ellipse, Stitch Between Worlds, Cage of Stars, and you can also find me talking absolute drivel on the Spotlight Indie YouTube channel. Go check out Spotlight Indie. That's www.spotlightindie.co.uk. Or you can see me on FanFiAddict, and yeah, just go to FrasierArmitage.com and you'll get all of the links to everywhere. And yeah.
Awesome. Adrian, do you want to give another pitch to Mushroom Blues and anything that you might have coming up on the podcast?
Sure. If you like fungi, then go check out Mushroom Blues, which is my debut novel. It's a fungal punk noir sort of mix of sci-fi and urban fantasy. It's a police procedural set in a dark fungal city with a detective, a human detective, and a fungal beat cop teaming up to solve a murder. And then I've also got a novella called A Murder Most Fungal, set in the same universe. It's kind of like a side story novella that'll be coming out in 2026. And then obviously like the Book of Spores, that's happening right now. Go back it. Here's the QR code. We've already had some backers during this live stream, so thank you to everyone who has contributed. And yeah, then on top of that, I'm also working on some cool side projects that'll be announcing next year. So 2026 is going to be just like bonkers across the board. And then SFF Addicts, if you want to hear my co-hosts MJ Kuhn, Greta Kelly, and I chatting with all your favorite authors, then go check out that podcast. You can find it in video. If you're watching here on FanFiAddict, you already know where to find the YouTube of the podcast. You can also check it out on Spotify, all the podcast platforms. The latest ones that we had Jay Kristoff on recently, which is a lot of fun. We've got some episodes coming up with Christopher Rocchio. And then we're doing like our big end of the year live stream where we're going to be chatting about our favorite reads of the year. That'll be on December 1st. And then 2026, we've already got like a bunch of interviews that we're recording this month that'll release early next year. And one of them is like literally with like me, Greta, and MJ, like collectively one of our like dream guests. And we met him at Worldcon and he agreed to come on the podcast. So it's like one of those holy shit moments. So it's going to be a lot of fun. But yeah, that's about it for me. You can find me all across social media at Adrian M. Gibson. You can check out my website, adrianmgibson.com. And I also do book design. I designed this one for Frasier because he doesn't know how to make good book covers, I'm sorry to say. So I did it for him. But yeah, you can hire me to do cover design or to do interior design and that kind of thing. You can find all that info over at my website.
Fantastic. For anyone who wants... Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Holly. If I don't mention this book, my publicist is going to be pissed. Basically, it's a book that I've co-written about the game, the Chinese game Mahjong. It's called Mahjong: The Sound of Sparrows. I keep forgetting about it because I co-wrote it. It's coming out next year, and it's got a bit of the culture, history of Mahjong, and then the different ways of playing it around the world. So
Very
if
cool.
you're into the game, then yeah, I recommend it.
Yeah, that sounds incredible. For anybody who might want to find me or my books, I am on Amazon, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Blue Sky, I'm on all the places. I have no new projects to announce because I write very, very slowly. But we do have a few things coming up on Spotlight Indie. So next week we have got a Spotlight Indie team episode of Be Gone, hosted by the lovely Alex S. Bradshaw. And then on the 30th November, Frasier and I will be hosting a live write-along party on YouTube where you can come and join in. It's mostly Frasier talking about snacks, but we do some writing, we have some chats, we have a good time, and it's a nice supportive vibe. I want to say thank you to my guests for joining me. I want to say thank you to everyone who is in the chat. Thank you so much. And I'm going to attempt to bring this home now. I'm a little bit nervous about how this is going to go, but
Frasier's going to turn into soft serve any minute.
Oh no, the pressure!
I literally disappeared like for a minute and did my pumpkin thing. So
was that
That
to like
over.
reassemble yourself as a human?
Pretty much.
Is that what was happening? Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. This is Frasier's. He's in disguise at all times.
Yeah.
So.
Post pumpkin Frasier, yeah.
Post pumpkin.
But to wrap up this panel on anthologies, I would like to say, finally, friends, go find the fully funded FanFi Family fantastic feast of fabulous fungi fiction. Farewell.
To Frasier Armitage.
From Frasier Armitage.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Thank you, everybody. Take care.